So, welcome back to another episode of the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast with Nick and Dom. I'm delighted to say this week we've got a very touchy couple of subjects that have been very current in terms of the kind of press and the media. One of them doesn't seem to go away, but the other one's relatively new. So, the first one we're going to talk about in the first half is the proposed changes to the Championship playoffs, taking the playoffs down to as low as eighth. And we're also going to talk about the 3 p.m. Saturday Blackout, which comes up every season, I guess. And, we're going to give our view on that and what we think as match-going football fans, and as match-going football fans as well, what we think of the Championship playoff potential of going down to eighth. And I've done quite a bit of prep for this episode with some stats. So I'm going to astound my friend Dom with some stats as we go through it. But without further ado, let's welcome Dom as my co-host to the Half and Half Scarf episode 15. And Dom, welcome. But that is a tremendous shirt you're wearing. Wow.
Yeah. Hi, Nick. Glad to be back. Can't believe it's episode 15. The Can't Believe It section, sponsored by Andy Newball. But yeah, we can't believe it's episode 15. I actually did get to the point today where I couldn't remember what episode it was because we've done a fair few now. So
yeah,
it's a good thing. But yeah, shirt. This is, obviously my wife is half Swedish and we have a big Swedish connection in our house. So this is the 2004 centenary shirt for the Swedish FA, if you like. And I quite like it. It's kind of a yellowy, sparkly gold. It's just something a bit unusual. It doesn't really see the light of day much, but I thought, well, stick it on the Half and Half scarf. It's unusual.
It's
and
rare.
I'm a big fan, mate, to be honest. I quite like it. It's different.
I like the fact that it's a Sweden shirt. It's not the usual. And I like the fact that it's a celebratory shirt. But I'll be honest with you, if you think that's gold, it looks more like nappy shit to me, mate. But that's
it's an off gold, isn't it? Yeah,
an off gold. That's a great phrase. Yeah, okay. So for those who are watching on YouTube, you'll see what I mean by the off gold reference point. I'm wearing a classic a Boro Hummel shirt, which is our away shirt from, I think, 2021, 22, something like that. In 2021, actually, because I caught COVID wearing this shirt. And it's got a bit of gold detailing on the Hummel, on the shoulder. And the reason I'm wearing it is because A, I like it. It's teal, a lovely colour. And B, Dom hates it. So I thought I'd wear it just to piss him off. So you don't like this shirt at all, mate. But what I would say to you is that the abiding memory of this shirt is the late, great Sol Bamba smashing a penalty in at Old Trafford when we beat Man United on penalties in the FA Cup in a very rainy night in front of 10,000 Boro fans, and Sol just stepped up and absolutely leathered it and just stood there like an Adonis. And God rest his soul, he was a lovely human being. He was great for us for a season when he was late 30s, and he still had the passion for football. He's sadly missed by Boro fans, Cardiff fans, and fans from around the country. But I wear this shirt, and I always remember him when just seeing him standing there, just that celebratory Adonis pose after smashing it home as a penalty taking centre half.
I completely agree, mate. Well said. I echo everything you say there. I mean, the fact that he was with us for such a short time, Middlesbrough, I mean, as a club, but he was so revered. He's gone down in legendary status just for the fact that he just gave his heart and soul on the pitch, but you could just see what a fantastic human being he was. He conducted himself so well everywhere. No one has a bad word to say about him. So, yeah, I think that tribute is perfect, mate. We'll leave it there.
Excellent. We'll leave it there indeed. Okay. Well, let's get on to a subject, and you'll probably be able to tell from my tone of voice that has vexed me somewhat. Over the last few weeks, there's been an increasing amount of media coverage about the prospect of the Championship playoffs, and I haven't seen any reference to League One, League Two, or the National League, but certainly the Championship playoffs being competed for down to eighth place. Now, all I'll say at this point is, and we can make it a very short podcast, that's bullshit, right? And that's the end of the podcast. It isn't really, but that's bullshit.
It's awful. I mean, we've discussed this off air, and as soon as I saw this being touted, I was like, what the hell is this? It's just awful. Because for me, the biggest concern on this, Nick, is if you prepare to go down to eighth, it's just a slippery slope from there, isn't it? It's like, well, we're at 8. Do you know what? Let's just go down to 10. And oh, hang on. Let's just say if you finish in the top half, you've got a chance. Come on. I mean, if you're finishing 8th, the difference in points that you've accumulated to that who's finished 3rd can be hugely significant. And it's usually a fairly abject season if you finish at 8th, isn't it, really? Let's face it.
Well, let me share some of my research because I've done quite a bit of research into this because it's not just about being annoyed by the prospect of it. And it's more about the fact that I don't think you should be rewarding mediocrity. An 8th is pretty mediocre, really. You know, it means that you've not really excelled. And I'll look at some numbers and some stats and some teams that would have been affected by it, including our own Boro side twice, and including Blackburn 3 times and Millwall twice since 2021 season. Since in the 5 seasons since the COVID season, including the COVID season, Blackburn have been 7th or 8th 3 times, Boro being 7th or 8th twice, and Millwall being 7th or 8th twice. So we should, by rights, feel like, oh, wouldn't it be a great thing to be involved in the playoffs? And I'll tell you now, in none of those seasons did any of those 3 teams look like a team who deserved to extend their season beyond the 46 games, and that includes the twice Boro were in there in 7th and 8th.
Completely agree. I was just going to really make that point myself, mate. On the 2 occasions Boro were in that position, they didn't deserve to be in that, in with a shout of going into a playoff. They were absolutely abject. On one of them, they'd lost 6 on the bounce.
Yeah,
and it was they were in appalling form. So that is the epitome of rewarding failure, because we were on a terrible run, and if the season hadn't come to an end when it did, we'd have just kept on spiraling. We couldn't win a game if our lives depended on it. So can you imagine the end of all that going, yeah, we finished 8th in the playoffs, fantastic, or clap each other on the back? And my concern on this, mate, is it's like everything else. If you bring it in, all of a sudden, over years, there'll be a bit of a hoo-ha and a backlash at first, and people like ourselves will always hate it. But over time, as it evolves, a bit like when they first brought in the playoffs, 30 years ago, you get to a point where you just accept it. And I just don't think you should ever get to a point where you are accepting stuff like this. We've had it before, haven't we? We discussed it. We're quite traditionalists, and for a while I didn't really like the playoffs. And I also perhaps felt that it was, back in the days when Middlesbrough competed in '88, when it was against, your playoff was against the lowest finishing team in the first division, and then whoever won over those 2 legs went up. I like that idea. But over time, I think we both discussed the Championship's become a better place for the fact that it has got that element in it at the end. It does give you something really tangible to play for. And also linked to the fact that, the parachute payments of the teams that come down, who invariably are the ones who bounce straight back up and are the most strongest, and usually finish in the top 3 positions, it does give other teams that chance to actually compete and get somewhere, which is a good thing.
My argument with the playoffs, a lot of people say, well, it should be 3rd, finish 3rd, it should be automatic, it should go up, top 3 should go up. My argument against that is, first of all, we all know from the first kick-off in the first match in the first week in August what we're playing for. Invariably, as you've said there, because of the unfairness of the parachute payment and the financial irregularities of that against the rest of the league, invariably you're playing for maybe 3 slots. And certainly sometimes 4, but mainly last year with Luton sort of dropping like a stone. But invariably, the parachute payment teams are in the top 6, aren't they? And usually in the top 2. So if you finish 3rd and go up automatically, the other thing is the season in the Championship will be dead before Easter every year. Nothing to play for. Nothing to play for. Yeah. And the reality of that is, I think fans who are in with the shout of a playoff that we've been playing for 30 years, that we know is finishing 3rd, 4th, 5th or 6th, it keeps your season alive right to the last day of the season now. And that keeps, like last year, I think there was certainly, I think Sunderland were embedded in the playoffs, and Sheffield United were embedded in the playoffs. So there was teams playing for 5th and 6th. But there was something like 5 or 6 teams on the last day could get 5th or 6th.
Yeah.
Now, on that basis, that's absolutely fine. If you finish seventh, it's just tough. You just didn't get there. You didn't make it. You can't reward. Oh, well, you didn't quite make it. And then finishing eighth, I've got some numbers, right? The numbers are astonishing. And this is the gap between sixth and eighth over the last 5 seasons. It's on average, it's 4.4 points. So it's over. It's a win and a draw over the season
Mm.
between eighth and sixth. And you might say, well, that's not a lot. The average gap between eighth and third in the same 5 seasons, is 18 points. That's 6 wins over the season. So if you finish third and let's say you have a bad run, you have a bad refereeing decision, you get a sending off or something that affects you, whatever it might be, and you lose to someone who finished eighth, 18 points behind you, it's just wrong on every level. And I know there's an argument that says that Sheffield United last season finished a long way above fourth and fifth and things, but we knew before we kicked the ball that you're playing for third, fourth, fifth, and sixth if the top two have already gone.
Yeah,
Why change it?
I agree, and I think invariably as well, you'll tend to, and it's happening more and more that the fourth, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth are generally very close together in terms of quality, strength, and points.
Yeah,
You have the odd season where sixth, maybe fifth, and sixth can sometimes be a few points off where third place finished, but invariably they're fairly close. Definitely fourth, fifth, and sixth are close in terms of points. So all the teams are fairly evenly matched, and I think I agree with you, mate. It's become because we're all used to it. We know it. No one can really complain.
mm,
You know it's there. You know that if you finish third, you're going to have to go through that playoff system, and if you are the stronger team, you should come through and win. And
yeah.
Sheffield United pretty much did until the last whisker of that game where Sunderland beat them to it, and that's the jeopardy of it. But jeopardy's part of football, and it's a big part of it. And I think it's over the years, I would have to say that I think we've all become used to the playoffs and the championship, and it is actually something that's a good spectacle that we've all got used to. And it does mean the important thing, the key point here for me is it does mean that teams who would probably invariably never finish third have a chance, and
Yeah,
I like that. But this is taking it a step too far because, like you and your stats, emphasize the point. As soon as you start tipping it to seventh, eighth, and then if you get into seventh, eighth, where do you draw the line? 9, 10, 11? It's almost becoming what's the point? What's the point? Because so many teams get to a point where they can easily finish mid-table. So you wouldn't even really be striving to finish there, would you? If
no.
you know that you can finish maybe, I know we're not going to ninth and 10th yet, but if you know you could probably finish just above mid-table and get in with a chance, are you going to play harder throughout the season? I'm not sure you are. I think it dilutes the competition over
Oh,
the season.
it dilutes the brand completely because the championship brand is all about kind of blood and guts and
Yeah.
jeopardy and anyone can beat anyone. And if anyone being eighth can beat anyone in third after finishing 18 points behind them. Now, the other thing is I'll say to you is what do you think the highest points total of someone finishing seventh has been over the last 5 years?
Highest. So we're going for what the actual highest it's been.
The highest points total of any team, so that's 10 teams finishing seventh and eighth in the championship over the last 5 seasons. What do you think the highest points total has been?
65 points.
70, which is still crap. The
Yeah.
lowest has been 66, so anywhere between 66 and 70. Now, you're talking there, if you talk about a win rate of less than 40% in some
Yeah.
cases over the season. And even when you've got like 70 points, you've won 20 games out of 46, you've got a win rate of 43%. Do you deserve a crack at the Premier League for that? I don't think you do. And I'm a Boro fan. We've been in that position twice where we could have said, "Oh, we finished seventh. We're in the." I wouldn't want to be in the
I wouldn't.
playoffs.
I wouldn't. It makes you a little bit laughable as well, and it takes away a bit of the credibility of earning it as well. And I know that there'll still be people out there who say, "Oh, well, if you finished sixth, you know, you didn't really deserve to go up either." But it's like, well, come on, you know, this playoff competition's been in place now for 30 years. Yeah, we did because that's the competition,
Yeah,
and we won, so we did. End of. That's it. And like I said before, the parity of it now is you are very close in terms of strength, you know, quality, points totals, ability, you know, a capability of actually competing in the Premier League. Well, that's debatable for all who go up. So, you know, you can't really throw that into the mix. You know, would you have put Sunderland as a team that would, you know, do well last year? I think all of us would have said, "Oh, they'll struggle next year." But do you know what? Fair play to them. They've recruited well. And they're doing well so far. Long may
yeah.
it continue. I fully hope they do well.
Mm.
But it's a gamble. It's a you never know how anyone's gonna fare. I
Mm.
think the other key bit to come into this, mate, which is the important thing here, is why are the authorities wanting to do it? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. It's coin. It always comes down to money. It's just like, come on. You know, I know the Championship and the EFL isn't the same as the Premier League, but you don't want to be like the Premier League. You know, everything's about money and getting as big as you can and owned by corporate entities. And, you know, it's the bottom line, stripping out fan culture. Come on. Stop tinkering and ruining what is already a success. You don't
Yeah.
have to keep on tweaking it. You'll have people, you'll have suits sat in boardrooms or, you know, who haven't consulted a single fan thinking, we need to shake this up. We need to change it. We haven't changed it in 30 odd years. Well, we're not changing it because it doesn't need changing because it works and it's successful.
Apparently, they've had a behind the scenes vote,
Of course they
and,
have. Oh, of
and
course they have.
hang on, and what a surprise that the EFL Championship teams have voted for it. Well, of course they bloody
Of
have,
course they're
haven't
going
they?
to
I
vote
mean,
for it.
why wouldn't they vote for
Is
it?
that why wouldn't they vote for it? If you're a chairman of a club, you what? So you're telling me if I finish eighth, I've still got a chance of a playoff? Yeah, I'll sign up for that. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I'm not being funny. If you were, you know, if you, I sound like I'm going to be holier than thou here. I'd like to think if I'd turn around and say, no, the competition's fine as it is, thanks. You're just ruining it. But you're not going to do that, are you?
No.
You know, you're going to try and think of the best interests of your club. And if you think, hang on, if I finish eighth, but we actually put a run together and we managed to get in and squeak through by the back door, and we could get into the Premier League, yeah, I'm going to give that. I'm going to give that a go.
Let's look at teams who traditionally fall into that seventh, eighth, 10th, 12th. Okay, so Blackburn have been there 3 times in the last 5 years. Millwall invariably finished eighth, ninth, 10th. Okay,
Yeah,
um, and I'm not knocking Millwall. I think, you know, I've been a couple of times to the away end of Millwall. I've enjoyed my days out there, etc. But at no point have I ever considered Millwall to be a pretender to the Premier League entrance door. I just don't think where Preston North End and teams like that, Bristol City until last season, you know, the perennially finishing kind of, you know, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. Well, if that's where you're finishing, do better. Just
well,
do better.
and mate, that links into what I said a few comments ago. And we're not criticising these teams, by the way, and I'm not criticising you as teams, but that generally is consistently where you finish. Preston, Millwall, and the likes, you always finish around the same places. And I go back to the point I made before. If you know, I mean, yes, we're talking at the moment, we're now going down to seventh and eighth, but that is a slippery slope. And as soon as you start on that, it will increase. You just know it will.
Yeah.
So I go back to my point I made before. If you know that you habitually finish around that area, are you going to really try harder? I'm not sure you are. I mean, you know, the club's already said they will, but really, it's like, if we can just do what we always do, we finish around there,
Yeah.
we've got a chance, haven't we? And that's the danger of. I'm not so much talking about that in terms of seventh and eighth, but if you then start extending it further to like ninth and 10th or half, you know, the top half of the league, you'll have clubs just cantering along like they do every season, thinking, well, I don't have to really do anything here because I'm in with a shout at the end of the season. So what's the point of having a grueling, and it is a grueling, you know, 46 game season, you know, midweek Saturday, and it's a brutal season, the Championship, all for it at the end. You might, if you're gonna start going down this road, you might as well just say, well, let's just sack the season. We'll just have a playoff race at the end.
This to me feels like school sports day in 2025 now. Everybody gets a certificate for running the 100 meters race. Sod that.
Oh,
You either won it, you came second, or you came third, or you were nowhere. You know what I mean? That's it. There's not about being, oh well, everybody needs a little recognition for this, a little recognition for that. Football is a competitive sport. So if you're perennially going to finish seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th in that area, just do better. I'd say that to Boro.
better,
I'd
yeah.
I'd say that too, and about Boro. In
We always say it, do better. And how many times have we said it ourselves? When we've been at the game, we need to do better. We are a much better side than this, and the players we've got are capable of doing better. And we always say do better. Managers need to do better with how they play. But yeah, we've failed the last few seasons, and we recognise that, which is why we've gone again stronger again this year, because we want to do better. We want
yeah,
to go. We want to better ourselves. We don't want to just sit there doing the same as and same old, same old. And I don't think, and I might, yes, what I'm going to say here sounds slightly biased. I don't think Steve Gibson would stand for those values either. I think if you suddenly threw it at Steve Gibson, he'd probably say, well, okay, yeah, if you're going to bring it in, fine, because we'll have a chance of it, but we're not going to sit and settle for that. We're going to try and go off of our own merit. But
mm,
other time, I can't comment for all teams. Other teams might be thinking, do you know what? Resource wise, money wise, we're never going to be able to compete on those fronts. So we're just quite happy ticking along as we are, thanks. And we'll,
mm,
take our chance in whatever we then go down to in years to come.
yeah. Well, going back to the point I made earlier about the fact that we've known for 30 years what the rules are, but before we kick off, let's just revisit that Battle of Stamford Bridge scenario when the playoff originally 1988 was the team who finished third bottom in the old Division One, and then the three teams who finished third, fourth, and fifth in League Two or Championship as it now is. So just for memory purposes, Boro played Bradford City in the semi-final, and Chelsea, who were third bottom in the Premier League at the top division at that point. And by the way, for those who are listening, Chelsea weren't the Chelsea of now. They weren't multi-millionaires. Chelsea were a bang average, steady Eddie,
Yeah,
in decline top division team. But they played Blackburn, and they beat Blackburn 6-1 over two legs in the semi-final. Boro beat Bradford City 3-2, so we played Chelsea over two legs. And Middlesbrough beat Chelsea over two legs, 2-0 at the Riverside, and we got beat 1-0 at Chelsea. It all kicked off. It was called the Battle of Stamford Bridge. There was lots of, hooliganism and all that kind of thing. But we beat them on merit over two legs and took their place in the top division.
yes.
Now, I quite like that. But then when you look at what they do in Germany, the Bundesliga do exactly the same, but it only involves one team from the top division and one team from Bundesliga 2. So if you finish third in Bundesliga 2 and you finish third bottom in Bundesliga 1, you play each other over a two-leg playoff. It sounds great, that. But in reality, even though the team from Bundesliga 2 always get the second leg at home to give them that advantage of that home leg second, whatever, in the last 10 years, only two teams from Bundesliga 2 have beaten the Bundesliga 1 team over a two-leg piece. And the reality is the gap between the Premier League and the Championship now is so great that I don't think many teams who finish third in the Championship would have a cat and hell's chance of beating the team who finished third bottom of the Premier League, even though that team in the Premier League are clearly going to be in poor form, a bit of bad nick by the end of the season, have lost a lot of games and probably had the head sort of caved in from a loss mentality. Just in pure strength, in pure, I guess, money capability. I don't think going back to that's a great idea because the gap now is much bigger than it was in 1988 when Boro played Chelsea. What do you think of that?
Um, no, I think there'd be a good chance. I think some of those teams that finish third bottom in the Premier League have been playing absolutely abject all season, and I think if you catch them at the right time, third top of the Championship, I think they give them a really good game. I think, I think there's a better chance of that happening in over the Premier League and Championship than in the Bundesliga and Bundesliga Two. I think
Oh,
there's a marked difference between Bundesliga and Bundesliga Two, and I think that's why those stats play out. I do think there'd be a really good chance, and I don't think it'd be every season you'd see third bottom of the Premier League coming out on top. I'd like to see that matchup, and I think that would be something that you could still bring in and bring back, add a bit more jeopardy to it. I'd love that. I remember when it was like in '88, and I was there over both legs. I went to the semi-final and the final. Went to Chelsea. It was, I mean, the fact that we lost that match, but we'd done all the work in the home leg, and everyone knew what was at stake, and it was brilliant. It really was brilliant, and I'd be an advocate of bringing that back. I really would.
Let's look at the teams who finished third bottom in the last 5 seasons of the Premier League. At Burnley, Leeds, Everton, Forest, and Burnley. And like you say, you look at those and you go, well, Burnley have been a yo-yo club. Leeds under Bielsa, their first season. They were tearing up any trees in the Premier League, etc. So maybe you're right. Maybe if they want to change a winning formula, which they shouldn't do, they should change it where it gets to one representative of the Championship through a knockout phase, playing the one representative from the Premier League. That'd be hellishly interesting, wouldn't it? Then
it would. And you mentioned those 5 teams, and Everton are one of them. I don't think you'd see Everton storming a team. Over a 2-leg matchup where there's serious pressure on, you can be found out at the best of levels, and there's no saying Everton would steamroller a team. In fact, I think that would be a really nervy, edgy occasion over 2 legs. Do you know what, mate? You could even go as far as, okay, so you have that matchup and bring that back, but you could also then take it as far as, do you then have another element in terms of maybe the bottom 3 of the Premier League go down, and then it's to do with the one who finishes 16th in the Premier League, bring that into the mix. Okay. So, that way you still have the reward of 2 automatically up from the Championship, 1 in a playoff, but maybe another one that's to do with a direct rivalry to the Premier League. You could add that into the mix, because then that's not taken away from what's already there and what works, but you'd actually add some more jeopardy to it, which I think everyone would buy into that. I would. I really would. And I wouldn't care if it was Everton that finished 16th and were in that mix. Like we go back to, if they're the rules and that's what it is at the start of a season, and you know what you're playing for, that's the rule. And I think it would certainly add something to the Premier League, which is, even though it's not a close shop, sometimes it feels quite close in terms of just its strength and its power. And the 3 that come up invariably struggle. And sometimes if they do well for a season, 2 seasons, 3 or 4 seasons in, they're tired and they struggle and come back down. It's always nice to see a few teams that buck that trend, Brentford, Fulham being 2 of them, who've really embedded themselves, and long may it continue. But do you know what? It would just maybe give teams in the Premier League always looking over their shoulder a bit, and a bit of extra motivation to finish above 16th every year.
Well, I think a bit like the Championship, where some teams decide that they're going to finish. They don't decide, but they just historically finish 8, 9, 10, 12. I think there's teams in the Premier League who finish in the bottom third all the time, don't they? And they happily accept the fact that, well, the 3 come up are going to be worse than us and we'll be okay. And I think you like your West Hams and your teams of that nature would be very much sort of squeaky bum time, and your Wolves this season and all that kind of thing. I want to finish this part of the podcast on the reason none of what we've just talked about is ever going to happen is because the Premier League teams have to vote for an agreement on a change to the playoffs, because the ultimate end game is it will affect the Premier League. Now, Championship Chairmen are voting to say, yes, let's go down to 8th. Premier League are looking at that and they're probably thinking, well, that's just going to dilute us. Why do we want an abject team from the Championship coming in? We've already got this problem with this gap of difference between, genuinely, Leeds with 100 points versus somebody finishing with 66 points. The quality is going to dilute the Premier League brand. A, I don't think Premier League are going to vote for it, and B, the Premier League teams are not going to vote for any more jeopardy over them staying in what is a cartel in most cases. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, I think that the element of them being in 16th and at risk of going down, no, I don't think they ever would. Would they vote for a team possibly finishing in 8th come up? Do you know what? I think some Premier League chairmen would vote for that, because they'd be thinking, well, we've got a better chance of staying up if we have a team that finishes eighth, who manage to scrape up and they're poor. But then that's not thinking about the strength and quality of the league, is it? Because you want more teams doing well. Look at the Premier League at the moment. Crystal Palace beat Liverpool yesterday and are in second, unbeaten in 18, by the way.
Yeah.
That's exciting. You want to see more of that. As a neutral, I'm
going to stop you there. You want to see more of that. I want to see more of that. Fans want to see more of that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you now, the cartel at the Premier League do not want to see that.
They do not want to see that. No,
at all.
But we want to see it. And, even though I also support Everton, I want Everton to do well. I root for all the other teams outside the so-called Big Six and want them all to do well.
Yeah.
I'm looking at what Palace are doing right now and loving every minute of it.
And even as
because Liverpool got their late equaliser, which they've been doing in every game, and Palace trumped up 97 minutes and got a win. And I was just like, oh, that is beautiful, absolutely. And they are frightening at home at the moment. By the way, their form is just on a different level. I got a bit tingly yesterday, mate, thinking, do you know what? It's not like it's a fluke. They're playing very, very well, and their form and their stats are astonishing. And long may it continue. I'd love to see them punching.
The reality is, when you look at that sort of approach from Palace, is they've done that having lost some really good players.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, so I'm rooting for Palace. I'm rooting for, and I hate to say this as a Boro fan, I'm rooting for Sunderland. They're third.
I'm rooting for Sunderland. They're how they're going about it is exactly how you should approach it. Whether they'll be able to last it out the season, who knows? But do you know what? They've got a lot of points on the board already, and that's the key in the Premier League. Bag your points where you can, and if you get to a certain level, you're going to be pretty much safe, and it covers you for a time where you might have a bit of a wobble. So, yeah. I'm supporting them too.
The three promoted clubs this season have got more points now than it took the three promoted clubs last season to the end of November.
Yeah.
And we're not even at the end of September as yet. We are almost as it goes. So I think I'd love all three. And my view on Leeds United, not a fan at all. I'd love Leeds to stay up. We've mentioned this on a previous podcast. I'd love Leeds. I'd love Sunderland. I'm not sure about Burnley. The players just so boring football. But if Leeds and Sunderland stayed up, that gives hope to anybody else going up this season, saying, well, do it properly, do it right. So, yeah, okay.
I totally agree with you, mate. So yeah, but I don't think we're going to get our wish of seeing a bit more jeopardy between the Premier League and the EFL. But in terms of finishing 7th and 8th. I hate that. Like you just summed it up with, we went to all the clubs and asked them if they'd like it. Well, of course they're going to say they're going to like it. If they've got a chance of getting into a playoff system where there's money at stake, and getting into the Premier League and getting all this money, of course they're going to say yes. You don't ask the chairman of the clubs. You ask the fans. You ask the fans what they think. And do you know what? Some fans might turn around and say yes, but I'd like to think that any proper match-going fan who really pays attention, come on. Are you honestly advocating that you'd be happy for your club to finish 8th and have a chance of going up? I, for one, wouldn't. I don't want that in my football, football world. I don't want it. It's wrong.
And the last thing
you said, it's rewarding
mediocrity.
It's not failure. It's rewarding objectivity.
Yeah.
It's just, bland. It's just let's reward bland. It's just nothing, is it?
And the last thing I'll say is that even though chairman will vote for it because there's a chance of getting into the Premier League, the very least they're going to get is 2 very lucrative games at the end of a season.
Exactly. Yes, well said. That's it. It's more money at the end of the season, more fans in the door, a bit of an extra boost, and it's like, do you deserve it? Do you? Heck, it's like, no, you don't.
Okay.
End of. Yeah, wrong.
Okay.
On every level, let us know what you think, people who are listening in. But please come on and give us your thoughts. I'd be interested to see what everyone thinks regarding their club. But I know me and Nick, in terms of Middlesbrough, we would absolutely be 100% against it. I'd rather go on the current merit. I think top 6 is fair, and no one complains about it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what Millwall and Blackburn fans who've been there 3 times and twice over the last 5 years think. See what
they think. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the second half of the podcast, and we'll talk about the 3 p.m. Saturday blackout. For those who are not sure of the terminology, this is the rule that's in place that you cannot show in the UK a live football match that kicks off at 3 o'clock on a Saturday on television of any sort, whether it's Sky, whether it's other streaming services, whether it's BBC or ITV, you cannot show a 3 o'clock league game kickoff on TV. And the reason it's there historically is when television first came in, there was a real fear, probably genuine at the time, that if people could watch the game on television, they wouldn't go to their local match. And I think when it was brought in, TV being a bit of a novelty, it was like, oh, let's watch it on telly instead. And people would have done that much more than I believe that they would do it now. Now, first of all, in headline form, Don, without going into the what we think about it really, what's your view on the 3 p.m. kickoff and whether it is, has it got any currency in 2025 at this point? Do you think it's still valid?
No, I don't. I think they should scrap it. You know, in today's technology terms, people have got many ways of probably still being able to watch a 3 o'clock kickoff. We all know how you can do it, and there's probably plenty of people who do. But also, I think in these current times of, the amount of games that are screened at various different times, and you can come back and stream your matches, you record your matches, come back and watch them. I think in this day and age now, I think the reason it was brought in, like you just said at the start there was clear merit in that, and it made sense at the time. But we're talking the 1960s. This is over 60 years ago this rule was brought in.
Yeah.
Things have changed significantly. And I firmly believe now that people going to watch the football, they go to watch the football because it's something they do, and will, like I do, like you do, that you'd always do. That will always take precedence to watching it on a TV screen or by a country mile. And people who go to watch the football know that. The things that you see that you don't see on the football, even when it's being screened live, is a completely different experience supporting your team live than it is watching it on a television screen.
Mm.
So I think it's a very outdated model, and I think they should scrap it. I think it would actually, give some interest in putting them on some live 3 o'clock games for various reasons. Go on, mate. What are you going to say?
Well, what I was going to say was, when you look at it from a viewpoint of being a match-going fan, I don't know if I'm uniquely weird, but if we are on TV and we're often on telly Friday night, Saturday lunchtime, whatever, Sunday lunchtime, whatever it might be, I always go to the game live, but I always record the Sky coverage and I play it back. I usually play it back at time 6 to just look for any incidents that occurred or whatever it might be. And I'm always intrigued about what they say in the studio at half time and whatever. So I'll have the TV experience, but for God's sake, I wouldn't ever think to myself, oh, well, it's on TV, I won't bother going. As a match-going fan, you want to go to the match, don't you? That's the whole purpose.
Absolutely. I do the same thing. I always record the matches and watch them back. Sometimes if I have the chance, as soon as I get home, other times it might be a few days later. But I'm like you, I like to see some of the nuances of refereeing decisions. I like to see the goals from different angles. I like to see what, a little bit of what pundits might be thinking of us or saying about us and just the general feel. So, yeah, I get that, but I would never, ever want to substitute that from going to the game. Imagine sitting there thinking, I'm just going to sit and watch it on TV today.
No.
Like last year, I had an accident and badly broke my ankle, and I couldn't get to a couple of games. So my eldest, who holds a season ticket, she took my youngest daughter on one of them and a friend on the other. And I was sat, and funny enough, both of those games were live on TV. So I watched them at home, and oh God, it was awful. I hated it. I hated watching it on the TV. And I was more on pins watching it on TV. I feel more on pins watching. I love it. I much prefer being there because even though I'm on pins, I'm strangely more relaxed. But on pins, watching it on TV, I'm tied up in knots. I can't sit still. I don't enjoy it the same.
Yeah.
So I think that comes into it. I think as a match-going fan, sometimes when you're in the mix of it live, you're feeling the tension, but not so much as, I don't know what, I'd be fascinated to know what other people think, but I'm a terrible TV watcher of my team. I get very, very nervous and twitchy, and I'm constantly pacing around. I hate it. I don't like the experience of it. So I don't think people would want to replicate that. I think I think diehard match-going fans want to go to the game. End of. I don't think that's going to change if you suddenly say, "Well, you're on TV at 3 o'clock."
Here's the worry, though. It's not just the games that are on TV. Well, let's go back a point that you mentioned earlier. It might encourage the TV companies to put more games on at 3 o'clock on a
Yeah.
Saturday because that's the best time to watch football. We've discussed that
Oh,
previously. We
yeah.
like a night game. We like a night game, but
Love a
3 o'clock
game.
Saturday, three
Yeah.
o'clock Saturday, that's fine. So you might get more games at 3 o'clock Saturday in the Premier League and the Championship, for example. But even if they don't do that, right, I think the argument for keeping it is it'll affect the pyramid. So I'll give you an example. I live in York. I'm not a York City fan because I'm a Boro fan by birth. I keep an eye on York City, and hope they do well. It's good for the city if they are performing well, and they've been close a couple of times, getting back in the football league pyramid, the AFL pyramid, but not quite close enough. But the argument would be if you're a York City fan and you're going to go to a York City game on Saturday, and suddenly there is a Manchester derby on telly at 3 o'clock, or Liverpool versus Arsenal, or a big game that
Yeah.
in the Premier League, that your likelihood is that you'll stay at home and watch that game and not go and watch York City. I find that not only patronising, but also absolute bullshit. If you're a match-going fan for York City or anyone in the pyramid, you're not going to be put off by not going to the game to watch a game that you've got no skin
No
in.
winning. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a valid point, and I think it's a good one. And I suppose it is always a worry because you can't quantify it until you actually do it. But I do agree with you. I look at that the same way and thinking, surely you're not going to sacrifice going to watch your team and putting money on the gate and, watching your team above watching a Premier League game just because you think it might be a better spectacle, or your second team's Man United or whatever. In this day and age, surely you just do the same thing that they all do and just press record and say, "Well, I'll watch it when I come back." And yeah, people might see, if you have got fans who do that, then Christ, I'll put it out there. You're not a proper fan. If you go and watch York City, and then all of a sudden this comes in and goes, "Oh well, Man United are on. I'm going to watch that instead." Well, I'm sorry, but you're not a proper fan. You're just not. If that trumps you going to watch your team every week, then shame on you. You should be going to see your team. And do you know what? If it spoils it because in the days of social media you suddenly find out what the score is, well, so what? It shouldn't take away your entertainment from recording the game and watching it back, should it?
It should, and I'll take a reference point for someone old enough to remember it. If you're old enough to remember this reference, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's not like the Likely Lads where you're trying to avoid the score,
Yeah,
which is one of the funniest. If you've never seen the
it's
Likely Lads, don't know what I mean.
brilliant episode.
England are playing away. They try to avoid the score. There was no social media. These days it's quite hard to avoid, but you know what? Go and watch your team. And I'd say, rather than you say, you're not a proper fan, I'd say it's more than that. You're an embarrassment as a fan if
You're
you
an
want to.
embarrassment as a fan, yeah,
Yeah.
because you're basically disrespecting your own team and you're detrimenting your own team. And I would like to think that if you're already a fan, why are you going to suddenly change your routine because the 3 o'clock ban's been lifted? You're not. In fact, I would say I would. I know the point we've just been making is a theoretical one. The odd person might do that. If they do, they should keep that quiet to themselves. Otherwise, might get stoned to death by people. But um, I'd like to think it would strengthen your bond of supporting your team more and making sure you actually do go and making sure that investment is still there every single week.
Well, the last thing I want to make on the last point on this is that when it comes to certainly the Premier League and probably to a certain extent the Championship, certainly the proportion of revenue generated by gate receipts is minuscule compared
Yeah.
to the proportion of revenue generated by every other means, TV rights, merchandise, international streaming, whatever it might be. So I don't think that there's a problem with risking that at the Premier League and Championship kind of level. But I also don't think, because of the recent significant increase in attendances at lower league and non-league football, and long may that continue, by the way, I don't think that you could break that bond with someone who's suddenly fallen in love with Salford United or Salford City, sorry, or Walsall or whatever it might be, because they decided that they don't want to go and watch the big club in their area. They don't want to be paying a fortune for all that. They're going to go and watch a slightly lower level of standard of football, but they're going to get involved in it. I don't think it's going to make a difference at all. And for me, my final point on this is you can cancel the 3 o'clock blackout for me. I don't think it'll make a damn bit of difference. In fact, I think it'll be a good thing that people can then, just watch. If they, let's say, you broken your ankle again, at least you could get to watch Everton if they weren't on telly, couldn't you?
Well, exactly. I think it could enhance it, because I think if, me and you watch a lot of football, we go to a lot of games.
Yeah.
So the odd weekend when I'm not at football, I actually enjoy not being at football. That doesn't mean to say I don't enjoy watching a game on the TV or being involved in it. I would quite happily watch Soccer Saturday, knowing that you can actually, they can comment and discuss things, and you can actually see it live on the screen as it's being played. That would enhance it for me.
Yeah.
Also, I think you could look at the bigger picture and think, well, okay, if we're going to do this, we reward all the pyramid. So we don't just play Premier League and Championship games. We play League Two, League One, League Two games at 3 o'clock as well, and have red button coverage. And you know what? It might actually be the opposite, mate. Who's to say that if you were to really invest and make sure that all the leagues are covered and represented fairly, that someone might not catch a game in a League Two game and suddenly think, oh, do you know what? I'm going to get down there next week and go and see him myself live. Yeah. It could be the opposite. We're looking at the negatives of it. It could actually be a positive thing in terms of a money driver, money into the revenue from the broadcasters into the clubs, which negates any risk of losing fans and revenue. And it might actually instigate a new body of supporters who want to go and see a live game.
Yeah.
So let's look at the positives of it, and that would probably be my final point on it, mate. The positive aspects rather than the negative.
Excellent. I think it's fair to say that a rule that came in 60 years ago is probably not necessarily fit for purpose in 2025. And I think on that basis, we'll leave that point. Okay. So thank you again for looking at the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast, listening or watching or whatever. We've discussed the Championship playoffs. We're not a big fan or at all of going down below 6th, and the Saturday blackout, you can lift it for both of us. We'd be happy with that, and let's see what happens. We don't think it's going to be as bad as it is made out to be, and there might be some absolute upsides to that as well. So thank you for your support as ever. You can find the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast with Nick and Dom. Just search the full title, including the Nick and Dom bit, on any of your podcast platforms or on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, in which case you'll get your Monday fix of that podcast every week automatically. But we'd love a like, we'd love a share, but also we'd love a comment or two. And actually, please feel free to suggest subjects that you might want us to talk about. We try and keep our subjects on things that we think fans are talking about themselves in the pub and in the concourse and on the way to games, etc. So 15 episodes in, I think we're doing a decent enough job on that basis, but we're going to keep going every week. So your input's as valid as ever. And next week on episode 16, because it's going out in the international break, the second international break of the season, Dom and I are going to discuss something we don't really care about when it comes to the qualification, but we will care about it when it comes to the World Cup. We're going to discuss England's chances of winning the World Cup in 2026. So on that basis, Dom, thanks again for your time, mate. Thanks as ever for being a great co-host, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Much appreciated. And yeah, I echo your words. We love the interest from people and love when people post comments and possible subjects to discuss. We've done some of them already and we'll continue to do so. And we like to be able to put our comments in the chats and on the LinkedIn group and get involved. So long may it continue. See you on the next one, mate. Enjoying it.
Okay, mate. See you soon. Cheers.
See ya. Bye.